Hi, Stephanie. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Kevin?
I'm fantastic. I want to introduce our future audience to you. I'm so excited to get to talk to you today. This is Stephanie Sammons. Stephanie is a singer-songwriter who's released a couple of EPs over the last several years and is now about to release a full-length album, her debut full-length. Not that she's new to the world of recording because like I said, she's recorded these EPs and now we get this new full-length we're very excited about. And it's coming out on Friday, May 3rd, which is just a couple days from our conversation that we're having today. And so we're excited about that. New album is called Time and Evolution. And it's an absolute pleasure to get to talk to you today, Stephanie.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. I want to start a conversation by asking you what what role did music play when you were a child? Like, was it something you listened to and enjoyed, or did you know at some point early on that at some point, you have different career paths, but when you got to your music now at this point in your life, is this something you always knew you wanted to do?
I mean, music was always in my life for as long as I can remember. And, I was the kid just constantly humming. At the dinner table, wherever we would go, I would be in the car, in the back seat,
Right.
driving somewhere with my parents. And I grew up in the Baptist church down here in Texas. And so the Baptist hymns and being in the choir and all of that was a big part of my growing up experience. And so that was my introduction to music. As in addition to my parents, had an old album collection, and Elvis and the Beatles and those kind of albums were in there. But I think the church music was the most influential. Um, you know, of course, a lot of that's changed for me, but those songs are still ingrained in my soul. The melodies of those
Sure.
songs and the words and everything. And then I also fell in love with rock and roll. By the time I was driving, I was listening to Van Halen and Boston and
Uh-huh.
Triumph and bands like that.
Right, right.
Then I fell in love with country music, old school country music. My parents listened to that. So it's really always been in my life, as long as I can remember. Music was, and I did have a dream of I'd love to be a rock star. I was very fascinated when I saw someone on stage, performing live. It really, especially if they were singing something powerful or moving, that would really touch me as a kid.
Yeah, music is so powerful, how it can touch us and how a melody or a lyric can just stay with us through our lifetime. And it could change our life too.
Yeah.
Sometimes one lyric is something that becomes a mantra for us, or one song becomes a mantra for us and hopefully in a positive way to continue in life to help other people to be happy internally. And so music is so powerful for that reason. I agree.
Yeah, totally.
So a combination of church music and good old rock and roll and then some country. And so you've a well-rounded music career as far as the listening part of it. And then uh in your writing, you've decided that your writing is more like Americana kind of style, right? And I probably in there is still a little bit of that other path of songs that something like Americana is something that can go a couple different directions, of course.
True. I think, a gal who helped me really define my style called me folk leaning Americana. And I do think some of those influences come through, that we talked about earlier. I mean, I do have some rock and roll in me, even though I'm playing an acoustic guitar the majority of the time. But the Indigo Girls were a huge influence. I was a freshman in college, I think, when I first heard their music. It's when they were first coming out on the scene, and that that style of acoustic music, just guitar and vocal, really appealed to me. So that kind of got me on the course of. I had played the piano. I grew up taking piano lessons. I'm very rusty now. I don't really play. And but then I wanted a guitar. I wanted to learn how to play the guitar, and that sent me on this path of more of a folk leaning style.
And so you mentioned Indigo Girls, and there was a time in your working towards always, we're always trying to improve our songwriting. I'm an amateur songwriter, so I can't say I've taken, I kind of envy the path that you've taken. You said I wanted to do this my whole life, and I've gone and you're doing it now. So that's wonderful. And but when was it in your work towards your music that you sat down with Emily and from the Indigo Girls, and actually she's one of your mentors, you mentioned, that has kind of, in person mentored some of your songwriting styles?
Yeah, well, I got involved in these creative performing songwriter workshops in Nashville, run by a gal named Lydia Hutchinson, and she was the publisher of Performing Songwriter magazine for years and years. And she ended up folding that magazine and starting these workshops in Nashville. And I got wind of, actually, my partner gave me a gift of going to a Mary Gaucher workshop. That was my first one in 2016. And I think my first workshop with Emily was 2018. But these were small group workshops of mostly middle-aged people doing other things as a career and having songwriting as really a passion and an interest. And some were more hobbyists, some were more serious. But that's how I got to meet Emily. And, she would spend some one-on-one time with each person, and we'd play a song for the group. And so I got a lot of valuable feedback over the years from Emily on various songs that I've written. And she's certainly been an influence in my style, especially in melody, not as much as lyrical, but her melodies, the melodies that she has created in her songs that she's written, are just beautiful melodies.
Yeah.
And then she sometimes sings about complicated things or hard things as well. And I really love that. I love bringing up a tough subject within a beautiful melody.
Yeah, because I mean, sometimes that's not the case with musicians. They tend to, if it's a sad song, it's a sad minor sounding melody, minor key. Or
Right.
if it's a happy song, you're going to hear lots of upbeat sounds and bright notes. And so it's interesting. Crowded House wrote a song once about, about the loss of their drummer, and it was such an upbeat song. And when they listened to it, I realized what they were talking about, but it was so upbeat and so the full beat fast. And it's like, oh, but that was their way of their therapy of explaining what happened and how they miss him. So
Yeah, I think that's fascinating.
yeah, I think so. I think
That's
so
cool
too.
too.
Yeah. So it could be a melody, and like you said, melody can be so different for the theme of what you're talking about. And
Yeah, and it can be an upbeat song, or it can be a slow song, or it can be a ballad. It's the world is your oyster in terms of what you want to create, the style and the sound and the vibe that you want to create as a songwriter. That's one of the really fun things about it.
absolutely, absolutely. When you were in these workshops, were they usually one day? Were they a couple days? Because I mean, so much. If you're going around, you said it's a small room, but yet going around with each person, let them kind of have some one-on-one time with the artist, the songwriter, and then playing. Is it a couple of days that you get together, like a conference almost for these songwriters, or?
It's actually, they are 3 full days. Most of them are 3 full days. Some of them are 3 full days and 3 full nights as well. Not that we would spend the night there, but you'd go until 10 o'clock at night, kind of thing. We have some studio recording workshops that were like that, but you really immerse yourself in the experience with the way that Lydia has structured these workshops. And I've never been to anything like it. And she just told me how many workshops I've been to now. It's 26.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
So, I was hooked. I was hooked from day one, and I was on a path to improve my songwriting and get better. And I just fell in love with it. So that was really that was the catalyst for me to get back on that horse again.
Right.
Because I released an EP in 2010 when I left my corporate role at Merrill Lynch. But I didn't have the songwriting skills really. They're very kind of surface songs, you know. And it wasn't until I started going through these workshops beginning in 2016 that I learned really how to structure a song, how to use imagery, how to come up with what to write about, these sorts of things. And it changed my songwriting completely.
I'm sure it did. And 26 of those workshops, I mean, you obviously you like you said, you got hooked. And so many of the people that you worked with in these workshops, it must have been kind of like once in a while. I mean, we all put our pants on the same way, one leg at a time and everything, but these were people that you probably grew up listening to their songs and their craft of songwriting, someone like Beth Nielsen Chapman and Jonathan,
Yeah.
and people, maybe you can mention a couple of the people that you worked with in these workshops.
Yeah, Mary Gaucher, Jonathan Brooke, Emily Salyers, Susie Boggess, Verlin Thompson, Gretchen Peters, Kim Ritchie. I just did a workshop with Kim Ritchie. I know I'm forgetting someone, but those are the Beth Nielsen Chapman, as you mentioned. Yeah, I think that's all of them. It's a small group, and they're all, most of them have been Grammy nominated.
Right.
Emily and the Indigo Girls, they won a Grammy. So it was, they know their stuff, but at the same time, they're like, well, here's how I do it, or here are the rules, but there are no rules. So you can break the rules.
Right.
So over time, I went from really trying to write to please the artist I was studying under, to create a song that really appealed to them, the pleaser in me, I went from that to really listening to my own voice and taking the feedback in stride. Sometimes I would change it, sometimes I wouldn't. Most of the time I would, but really kind of developing my own voice out of that process and developing confidence that I'm creating my own style within these parameters, but I can break the rules if I want to. So it's been really fun.
I'm sure it has been because you've gotten all this different feedback and advice, and you could either, like you said, make your own style and just have this in the back of your mind, not letting it, get to you too much, like not like breaking some rules, like you said, and at the same time, being able to kind of just have some thoughts pop in this, maybe I could do this, maybe I could do that. You learn certain things, maybe you hear a certain chord progression that you really like, and it's not, I mean, not the same exact key, but you like, oh, if I take this chord up here and I do that, so many different things I'm sure that come up in those, in those workshops, and then you make it your own.
Yeah. That's one of our part of the homework is to come with a song that isn't finished, or that you've been working on and you're close. Maybe you've got a couple of verses and a chorus and you need one more chorus or one more verse, or you need a bridge. But gosh, some of those insights that I've received, like, try this chord. I'd have a whole song written and try this chord. Let's see what this sounds like if you try this chord for the chorus, if to start the chorus with, and boom, it just opened up a whole new pathway for me to take the song. It's things like that, just tiny little valuable tips and insights that make a huge difference. With Mary Gaucher, one time, her big thing is writing from the point of view that best serves the song, whether it's about you or it's not about you. If it's the truth, write about it most of the time in the first person, And I had written a song in the second person where I was the observer and I was talking about a she, and it was my sister. And I wrote it in that voice. And Mary Gaucher said, try this, start over. This is an incredible song. It's beautiful, blah, 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 blah. Start over and play it in the first person. And I was like, but Mary, but it's not, but I'm the observer of this growing up, and she's like, it doesn't matter. You write from the perspective that best serves the song. And I was like, okay, I get it. And I changed it. I played it in first person, and she's sitting there and she goes, you got everybody in here crying. Look at that. Because they felt the heat and they were touched. And so it's things like that I learned that are like, God, just incredible. I wouldn't have figured that out really on my own.
Well, and the fact that you were writing in the second person too is a neat thing in itself. That it just that one song she must have just felt like, because some people write everything in first person or they write about other people instead. They don't like to write about
Yeah.
themselves, write about other people. But the second person is kind of like right in the middle there. You kind of can go either direction, right? And first person or third. And so in itself, that concept is really cool. But she must have really felt, and it sounds like you were pleased with how the outcome of that. At first it's kind of like I wrote it second person. I'd like to kind of keep that. But when you tried it, see what it came out like, it sounds like you really did. You had a hit. You moved the room. The room moved.
Yeah. It might have actually been in the third person because it wasn't a you song. I don't remember, but it was just valuable advice. And this
Yeah.
was not that long ago. I mean, this is a new song I've been writing. So it's not even on my album because you keep writing. But sometimes I kick myself because I'm like, I should have known that. I should have known that from all these classes and as many times as I've worked with Mary Gaucher. But it's so refreshing. Sometimes those mentors think, well, you already know everything that I have to teach. You already know my bag of tricks. You've come to 3 or 4 of my classes. I'm like, you don't understand. It's you get something new every time. Even though you're listening to the same person for 3 full days, I at least get something new out of it every time.
I would imagine that would be the case because you think about when you watch a movie. Some people watch movies 3 and 4 and 5 times before they really, really they like the movie and they like it when they want to watch it again. But before they really find something in that movie that really connects it all, and they didn't realize, or reading a book again, and you miss details, and so
That's so true.
So seeing a workshop, being a part of a workshop several times, I would think every time would be something else would be pulled out that you might have missed. And plus, they're interacting with new songwriters. Other songwriters never knew
Right.
last time, and you learn they say something to that songwriter that you didn't hear in the last batch of people. So
You're so right. That's exactly how it happens. And I'm sitting there scribbling in my notebook like, oh, that's good. Because you watch the feedback of every songwriter. Every songwriter gets up there and performs their song. There might be 12 of us, there might be 15 of us. That's usually where the numbers are. And we have done some small groups where there's just 6 of us. But you get the benefit of listening to the feedback for every songwriter in the room because they go up and they play their song.
right. No, that's great. I would think that would be just amazing to get that kind of feedback and hear how people maybe you've written something similar to one of the other songwriters in the room, a similar concept, and so you didn't have that on your plate that day, but they talked to the songwriter talked to that person, and it just hit home with something that you've got in your desk back at home that you were writing, and
Correct.
so
Yeah,
it's very exciting.
it was fun.
So you then released a second EP in 2017, right? So you had gotten out of corporate America, Merrill Lynch, you said you went on to something different and you were focusing on your music, and in 2017 it was another EP.
Yes, I did another EP in 2017. I recorded that in Austin with a friend of mine who was kind of I'll call him a bedroom engineer in that we started messing around with songs in the early 2000s, and he recorded some of my earliest writing. And then he went from there to retiring and building this huge studio in his home and became very well known in the Austin area. And then so he kind of produced, I would say we co-produced my EP, but that one was 2017. And it also has different styles of songs. I mean, the first song on that record is kind of a driving song.
Yeah.
But that was a great experience. I was not as intimidated as I was doing the first one in 2010. I just felt like I don't know what I'm doing, and just kind of let them take charge, and it was fine. It was a great learning experience. But the 2017, I'd taken 2 or 3 of those workshops and started working on writing new songs. And so those songs are better developed than the 2010, but you grow as an artist and you improve as an artist. And those were like it seems like every 7 years or so, I'm coming out with new music. So I'm trying to like close that gap from here on out. Now that I've got this full album coming, I hope to do something else, next year, 2025. So I'm working toward that.
That's great. That's great because there's just so much music out there, and you want to be able to continue to be in the ears of your listeners and to get them to know you through your music, through maybe a little bit of social media, just being
Yeah.
around and talking and interacting, and then the music. The music is what the foundation is, of course. And
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Did you when you were working with producer on the second album, I know on the first album you kind of like said you kind of let them do it. You were learning how this whole process worked. But after having gone through some workshops and for the EP and now this new full length, the producers, well, I read a lot of books about producers and everything. I'm just curious. I mean, some of the producers and they mentioned that there's so many roles to a producer. They're part psychologist, they're part this, they're part food late night snack buyer. That there's all sorts of things that they get pulled into in the middle of the night sometimes, or and one of the things that was interesting is that they said that they sometimes suggested an alternate lyric. And I thought, as a songwriter, I never thought that a producer would go down that route because to try to change the lyric because it's so personal. But they said sometimes and sometimes they would take their advice and sometimes not. But I just didn't think they would even go there. Like that was like a taboo area of trying to change someone's lyric.
Yeah. I mean, the only time that's happened with me was Mary Bragg, actually, who produced the Time and Evolution upcoming album, challenged me on a lyric in some of our meetings before we got into the studio, and it made the song better. She didn't give me the lyric. She just said, this section is an opportunity to expand on the story.
Okay.
And I had kind of made it just a repeating type of a section in the song that would show up in 2 places. And so I rewrote those sections and it just made the song so much better. I mean, she had some really great advice. I think that was the only song. The other suggestions, I don't think I took. I think I stuck with what I had. I tried. One of them I did. Actually, I did another, just a one-liner thing to make it make more sense. But she was great. But she's a songwriter. She's an incredible songwriter as well. I mean, I put her up there with the others that I've learned from. So that was really awesome to work with someone who's a songwriter first.
Right.
And then a producer. But in Austin, I worked with John Neese, and the best thing about that experience was I had known him over the years because we had worked together and played with songs, years prior. And I just felt so comfortable with him. He was so supportive. The band he brought in, they were awesome. They were supportive, and they didn't try to change anything or take it in a different direction. In fact, they listened to, I'd really like this song to have this kind of Melissa Etheridge rhythm to it, just some big drums. And I really like this song to be kind of tender and delicate. And I would give them examples of songs where I really like the style. And Mary Bragg asked for that kind of thing too. So it's just a learning process to record with different people in different studios, and it's fun.
And maybe that's one of the roles that a producer finds himself in, is that they find these musicians, like you said, they kind of help assemble these musicians that they've worked with in the past, networking and finding these people to work with, and you find yourself with a great team behind you on the instruments that sometimes just starting from the beginning, like who's going to play? I don't have a band.
Yeah.
I'm just speaking as a solo. You're a solo songwriter. Who's going to play these songs? Who's going to expand this out to be more than my voice and the guitar? I want to hear that rock, that country full sound, the drums, the overdubs and melodies, and all the different things that you can't do as one person. Sometimes you could when you multi-track, of course, but sometimes it's the concept of just having a really strong band behind you because you want to do a live show, or you want to sometimes acoustic, sometimes
Right.
band.
Yeah. And the musicians, in my experience, brought so much to the table because it was, they say, well, that's my job, and to just figure out what style of percussion works best for this song and that song, as an example. And I'm like, man, um, my drummer percussionist for the upcoming album, the full album, he was amazing. He knew the vibe of every song based on how I was playing the guitar, and just beautifully laid down those tracks. I really respect his style a lot.
That's great because it makes the
His
process
name's
so much easier.
Jordan.
Jordan,
Jordan Pearlson, his name.
was he part of the duet on the album? Is that correct? Am I thinking correctly? No,
No,
it's
that
Josh.
was Verlin Thompson. Verlin Thompson was he was featured on one of the songs
Okay,
called
okay,
"Grow Up," and he
okay.
he
That's
sang and
right.
played guitar. Yeah, that's probably who you're thinking of.
That's what I'm thinking of. Okay, yes, yes.
Yeah,
And I understand that you spend a lot of time now between, it's like a tale of two cities, between Dallas and between Nashville. And I would think in Nashville, so many people, Austin too, of course. Austin's a big music central,
yeah,
it's huge, but Nashville too, of course. There's so many people in that city. It's a big city, but everybody's kind of connected. It's you maybe your beautician is the neighbor of a songwriter, or everybody kind of knows everybody. They seem to be very supportive from the different people I've spoken with, very supportive and very eager to help other people with their songs or with their albums and their engineering. And
yeah. Nashville is so unique. It's such a great community. It is like a small town in a fast growing city.
yeah,
You know, and I've met so many songwriters, and there is a lot of support. And you're right. Instead of 6 degrees of separation, it's like two,
yeah, yeah.
or 1.5, if that's possible. And I was fortunate because Mary Bragg really brought me into the circle and made a lot of introductions. But at the same time, I developed relationships with folks like Mary Gaucher, who lives in Nashville. And so I'm kind of in between those two generations. Mary Gaucher is ahead of me in age, and Mary Bragg is behind me. So I'm literally, middle aged, and it's weird because I haven't met that many singer songwriters who are my actual age there. And it's just because I haven't met them yet, but I know they're there. So I know all these 30 and 40 somethings, and then I know several 60 plus folks who've been around, who are long timers. So it's neat because I have this unique community that I've been able to develop relationships with,
Oh, it's
which I
fascinating.
love.
And you get different things from each generation. You kind of stay
Yeah.
young with the younger generation. They keep you young, and the other generation is wise and has experienced some things that maybe we haven't experienced in our life. I feel the same way. I'm kind of in between those two generations you talk about, and I think we were born at the right time, because I kind of keep hoping that one of these producers is going to put together some kind of a big talent show that would open up all sorts of worlds for the middle-aged singer-songwriter, because the radio doesn't support too much of anything anymore in the way of like staying power because there's so much Spotify and whatever else. But I keep
Right.
thinking that people our age are going to want to keep listening to people our age, you know, that
Yes.
they can relate,
Yes.
can relate to
And
us.
I do feel like that's my audience. That's who I'm trying to reach. I think that's the audience my music is the most relevant for. But that doesn't mean that the other generations also can't enjoy it and, appreciate it.
Right. Right.
But the younger generation, I just can't stay out as late as they do. I can't hang with
Yeah.
them. I had a I think it was like a half hour showcase at unofficial showcase, whatever, at Folk Alliance earlier this year. And it was at 1:30 in the morning. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, okay, I hope I can stay awake that long. And I did, and I got through it, and it was wonderful. But yeah, I joke about that because they are, I keep saying, just wait, just wait.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to stay up this late in the
Yeah. So,
future.
so true. So true. It catches up with us. I mean, I used to be a night owl and an early riser, and I can't do both anymore. It's got to be one or the other. No.
Yeah, totally. Me too.
Uh, so when you've done some you talk about that late night performance, and a lot of those performances tend to be late night, even a Monday night. Someone might be performing late at night, in a small setting, in a small room, in a club, whatever. And sometimes shows start at 10, 11, 12, like you mentioned, 1:30 in the morning. Um,
Yeah.
you played at the Bluebird, correct? You've done a couple songs at the Bluebird, or I don't know, maybe more than that. I don't know how much you've done there. I just know that you did play there.
Yeah, I played there one time for a performing songwriter showcase. We each played two songs. It was a Monday night on their songwriter night. It wasn't their open mic night. It was um, that was part of a Lydia performing songwriter program
Right.
that, she kind of handpicks who she wants to play in those. So that was my first experience at the Bluebird, and it was nerve-wracking as heck, but it was great. It was just such a wonderful time, and I do want to go back. I do have a goal and a desire to sit in one of those circles and play songs with other songwriters that I admire and respect. So I
That would
hope to
be,
get back there.
yeah, that would be amazing because it's just it's kind of like the sacred ground of music and songwriting, right? In a sense, I mean, there's
Yeah.
so much has taken place in that room. I've never been there. I wore my shirt, my Bluebird Cafe shirt in honor. Let's see if I can stand up here for a second. My Bluebird Cafe.
Oh, I love it.
I ordered it by mail. I can't say I was there and bought it. I wish I was there and bought it, but I love the Bluebird Cafe concept and all that it stands for. And I just kind of let my time go by before I tried to get down there and do something myself. Life kind of got in the way. Life kind of got in the way. So,
Sure. Yeah, I get it.
but have you seen that documentary, Bluebird? Have you seen the
Oh,
documentary?
yeah.
Isn't that amazing? And you then you
Yes.
played there to think, wow, there was Garth Brooks sitting there with his songwriter that wrote one. I can't think of what song it was in the documentary. That I think is so neat to hear the songwriter of the song for the artist that has the face to the public
Yes.
and see them actually sing it. And then sometimes the bonus with the artist that has made it popular for them.
Yeah, that was The Dance, and Tony
Yes.
Arata wrote that song. And I actually was at the Bluebird one time when Tony Arata was playing, and I didn't know who he was, and he started playing The Dance, and it was just, you want to talk about a lump in your throat. It was
Yeah.
so gorgeous. And you heard a little bit of it if you
Yeah.
watched the documentary.
Yes.
Um, yeah, that really connected the dots for me as well. That these are my people. This is my tribe.
Right.
They're songwriters, and most of us can play an instrument. Not all. Most of us can write, and most of us can sing okay and carry a tune. There are some who are wonderful, amazing singers. Like Mary Bragg has one of the most beautiful voices I've ever heard. And there are others who have good voices, not great. That's kind of the category I've always put myself in. I've really had to work on my voice. That's been the place that I had the least amount of confidence, that I've had to work the most on. Just really being able to relax and sing and trust my voice and like my voice. You know, when you listen to yourself back and you're like, oh, that's not me, you know?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, just to really go through that discovery process, that this town is full of the people that I can't believe that this is their job. I can't believe that this is a thing.
Yeah.
Because I really didn't realize that. I was one of those people who thought, oh, that song that so and so sang was so amazing, but it wasn't written by her. Um, that was kind of eye opening for me to learn that.
What do you think about that concept for yourself? Like when when a songwriter writes songs, so many times they're so personal to their exact experience in life. That's where it's like a diary that sometimes we open for other people to hear. How how do you feel about the concept of possibly someday, or maybe you've done this already, writing for somebody else, writing a song for someone else to use? And if so, is it colleagues in your close circle, or is there someone out there that you hear their voice and you know that, boy, I could write a song for them and it would just be amazing because I write in the style of their voice?
That's a really good question. I mean, I will say that there are maybe only one artist who I think some of my songs would resonate with. But I've never tried, I don't ever set out to try to write a song for someone else. I never try to write with commercial thinking.
Right.
I used to, but as I've developed as an artist, it's more important to me. It means more to me to write my authentic songs that I want to write. Most of those artists now, in fact, if not all of them, are co-writing. So you get in a room with two or three people and you write a song together, and they're writing all the time. I mean, some of them who are trying to write for other artists they're writing 3-4 songs a day. You know, that is, I'd love to try it, but that is typically not my style. You know, I'll take a month if I can get 6 to 8 good songs a year. I'm happy. You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
so I don't know. That whole business is changing rapidly. It's tough to figure out where to fit in. But in the meantime, I've just accepted that I'm an artist. I'm Stephanie Sammons. There may come a time when I run out of ideas. And so co-writing is really great for that. When two people are coming to the table with thoughts about, how about this riff? How about this chorus? How about, I woke up today thinking about, I don't know, you name it, something that, how the half moon last night was lighting up all of the trees in a very mysterious way, and it just really stuck with me. I can see how co-writing would be a really neat experience.
And at the same time, like you say, though, I mean, sometimes you think about this, like you say that, that's their job, a song circle kind of a situation, right? Like a song circle where they're sitting there, 2 or 3 or 4 of them, like you said, writing. And, okay, we're going to meet from 2 to 3 today, and we're going to write a couple songs. It's like, it sounds so plotted, and not a negative thing, but just that it's plotted. And we know that it's not that easy just to have divine inspiration of music falling and lyrics falling in our lap for that 1 hour. It's going to come to you like you said, you see the dawn, you see the moonlight, and experiencing being out there. You might write a song over the course, like you said, 7 or 8 songs over the course of a year. That song is growing in you as you experience the world.
That's right. It gets pieced together over time. I might have that experience of seeing that half moon and thinking about how it's illuminating the trees in my backyard or something, but not really match that to a song, or it doesn't. It takes time to kind of come together.
Right.
But at the same time, I think it also has to be a practice. I remember Jason Isbell on a podcast interview saying, you don't just go out and play golf and expect to play well if you don't hit balls on the driving range and practice. You don't become a good golfer just by going out and, oh, I think I'll play 18 holes today. You pick up your driver and you hit, 20 drives and you hit 27 irons. And I think he's right about that, but it's hard. It's hard that to put into practice writing every day like that and feeling like you're coming up with something. So for me, I don't put that pressure on myself. And if I'm writing, I'm just kind of getting all the junk out of my head.
Yeah.
What's floating around in there before I can really get to the good stuff.
Right. That makes sense.
And then I actually have done recently a co-writing experience with one of the workshops that I attended. One day we spent on co-writing. And so me and my songwriter friend, her name's Jeanette, we wrote a song together and we just both brain dumped. And I took notes. We came up with an experience that we had both been through, which was leaving corporate America and pursuing other things, like songwriting, for example. And everything she said, I'm just scribbling. And then she did the same. She asked me a lot of questions. And then we went through and circled, ooh, this is good. Ooh, this is good. This is good. And put a song together that way. But it took all day.
Right.
We weren't fast. But we got a pretty good song out of that experience. So that made me more intrigued about the possibility of doing some co-writing. And there are some songwriters I'd love to maybe write with because I respect their writing and I think we have similar styles, that kind of thing. So we'll see.
Yeah. Stay tuned for that, right? Stay tuned for the future.
Right. Yes. You never know.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about the new album so we could make sure we get to spend some time really digging into that a little bit here.
Okay.
So, like we said, it's being released on May 3rd, this coming Friday, and Time and Evolution. How did you come up with the title for the album?
Time and Evolution is a line in my song Billboard Sign. And a billboard sign is about my coming out experience and the conflict of my religious upbringing.
Mm-hmm.
And the impact that had on my family, my immediate family, and how do you reconcile that? How can you be gay and be a Christian, and how does all of that come into play? And so Time and Evolution just came to me because time passes by constantly, right? Continuously. And everything changes. Nothing stays the same. And through time and evolution, healing was eventually a lot of healing achieved. And so we talked about it. Mary Bragg and I talked about some potential titles. And that's the one that really stuck with me.
So you said there's a line in Billboard Sign that is Time and Evolution, and I love that concept of the album doesn't have a song called Time and Evolution, but the song it's mentioned. I was just talking about this in a recent interview with somebody, and we were just talking about that, how it's so neat to all of a sudden you expect that maybe there might be a song, not that it has to be. There aren't any rules, right? There aren't any rules, but sometimes you expect that there's gonna be the title track from the album, blah 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 blah. But then you don't see that. But then all of a sudden you're listening to a song, you're like, that's where the song title came from. I mean, that title, or did you, when you had that conversation with Mary, was that before you wrote Billboard Sign, or was it after you wrote Billboard Sign and you pulled that out of it to be the album title, like the conversation about what you might call it?
Oh yeah, that was after everything was in the can. We were done recording. It was our last day. We were having dinner, tacos, and a margarita, the very last night.
Yes.
When everything was finished, and we started kicking that around. And when I sing time and evolution, I'm saying I thank God for time and evolution. I really sing the words time and evolution. And the title came after, it wasn't
Right.
like, ooh, that's the title. Oh, I better sing that fancy.
Right.
Um, it just was a natural progression as we were thinking about titles, and it made so much sense because the whole album collectively is about time and evolution, you know?
We all aren't we all, right? It's just it's everything
Right.
just we go through that time and evolution, it's just it's the part of course we don't, like you said, nothing stays the same. We're constantly changing, we're constantly going through different experiences. People around us are going through different experiences. No 2 days will ever be the same. There's no groundhog day in life. Like
Right.
it's just things are different
And we either learn and grow from our experiences or we don't. And so um that's the choice we have, and it's easier for some and tougher for others. This thing called life,
Yeah.
it's a journey.
Certainly
So
wasn't an
that's the
instruction book.
idea behind it.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that we don't get instruction books for these kinds of things in life, and we learn in experience. And like you said, some people are willing to adapt to times, and some people get locked into a certain mindset, and it's life could be so much better for them if they were able just to kind of look at something from a different angle, or rethink that argument with somebody, or rethink what they said, or rethink what they did in life, or rethink whatever it is, and just sometimes it's cutting slack for ourselves. Sometimes it's cutting slack for someone else, and
Yeah.
coming back to the table to discuss and fix and heal
Yeah. And forgive,
and forgive. That's a big one.
right?
Forgive. Yes.
And with experiences like the one I went through, that many have been through, who are in my generation, um, the damage, there are wounds, and the damage occurs, and you can either forgive or not forgive. But, I chose to forgive. I think my parents chose love over standing their ground eventually. And we're better people for that. It doesn't mean there aren't scars, and there aren't wounds, but that's okay. That's my journey. That's my story. And it's the same or similar for some and completely different for others who came up through a different experience, the different type of a family.
Right. And sometimes not only for the songwriter themselves, but for the people that hear your songs, it's therapeutic for them because they've just, like, we're all different. Like you said, no one's exactly the same, but there's experiences that you share with other people in life that when they hear your lyrics and they hear maybe talking about your songs at a concert or in an interview, or and it touches home and it helps them. So that's the power of healing in other people that we don't sometimes even realize as we set out to write a song. But
That's a really great point. Yeah.
so it's very
I like
powerful
the word therapeutic. That's really, yeah, insightful.
for the songwriter and for the listener,
Yes.
you know.
Yeah.
So Billboard Sign was like this the second song that was kind of like put out there in front of the album, right? It's a kind of or is it upcoming, right? It's still upcoming. Right? Billboard is like coming.
It was the third single. So it came out a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
And then so I had three singles, and then the album drops on Friday.
What was the second single? I missed what the
The
second single was.
second single was Living and Dying,
Okay.
and Mary Bragg sings on that one. She's featured on that one. She sings on many of the songs, but she sings more prominently background vocals on that song. And then the first song was Faithless.
Was it hard to decide what song you wanted to put out there first?
Oh my God, yes. Very hard.
Yeah, I would imagine. It's a hard process because they're all kind of your part, a big part of you, and which one is going to go up? I would think that's a hard decision.
Yeah, they're all my babies. And so, you don't want to play favorites, but I changed my mind several times on that, which songs and what order. Um, but I'm very happy with the the order and the songs that we chose. I think it was the right decision. But who knows? There is no right or wrong
Absolutely not. It's really
with that.
there's no right or wrong answer. It comes down to what you decide at that moment and what just seems you just get a feel for what you feel is right. There's there's no,
Yes,
there's no yes or no, right? um
right.
I have a question for you about so if we put those three singles aside and then you have 700 songs on the album, if you had 5 minutes to convince someone that they should spend a lot of time with your music and listen to everything else, go back and listen to the EPs, listen to the rest of this album. What song would you pick from that point off of this album? If the three singles were put aside there and you had these other seven songs, what is your next? I'm not to make you choose between your babies though. I mean, but like which song would be next? Do you think would be after these three singles? Not necessarily that you're going to release it next, but that if you had 5 minutes to just say you got to hear this.
It would be Innocence Lost. It's a song about shooting a bird when I was 10 years old. That song means a lot to me, and I love singing it. I find that when I do sing it live, it has an impact on people, which I love. That's my whole goal is connection with the people in the room. And that song was on the short list for being a single, but ultimately, it wasn't one of those three that have already been released. But it's one of my favorites personally.
I've got to, in all honesty, say me too. I mean,
Really?
I kind of feel a lump in my throat now because I just within the last 24 hours, I've been kind of listening to the album over and over and over. And then I had found these extra notes that you had written about some of these songs. And so,
Mm.
when you're listening to a song, you're listening to a melody, you're listening to some lyrics, but in our world, we're so distracted by so many things. And maybe it's on in the
Oh, yeah.
background, you're writing something up or whatever it is. And then I really just sat there with the notes and I listened to it. And it did it. It kind of welled me up because I thought about that and I thought, and you explained in your notes how it's just that experience changed your life. It changed your life. And I thought, wow, it was so powerful and that's why I feel sometimes too, to know what the person was writing about. Sometimes it's some people like to share that, like you share why the song exists. Other people leave it to the listener and
Hmm.
but sometimes so many different things and it makes it personal to them. But this was a very vulnerable time in your life, this song when you were young and and trusting of the world and and it really had an impact on me when I read and then I went back and really analyzed the lyrics and listened to your voice. I was like, wow, that's it's heavy.
Thank you. Yeah, Mary Gaucher was actually the person who I told that story in a group one time, and she said, "You've got to write that song." And I'm like, "How am I going to write a song about shooting a bird with a BB gun and what that means?" And it took me 2 years to get to where I could write that song, and it was working in my brain how to tell that story. And what is not in my notes is I had that song written except for the last vignette about losing your innocence. The song is three different vignettes of how I lost my innocence, um, which we all do.
Mhm.
We just aren't protected, as we grow older, we experience things. And the end of the song came to me. I was literally working on the song, looking out the window, and my aunt that I was very close to was in the hospital dying from COVID. And my uncle had to drop her off at the ER. This was at the time where you weren't allowed to go in, couldn't go in, never saw her again. And she had it's a long story, but she had called me, FaceTime me with the mask on, and it was just awful, awful. And so I'm sitting there in this room, this really special room at Lydia's home in Nashville. It's my favorite room. It kind of reminds me of my grandmother's house where I got the BB gun, in East Texas, and this whole thing happened. And I get a text message from my family that my aunt had passed away. And so I'm in that room by myself, and I look out the window, and a bird came and landed in that tree and looked in at me. And that was how I wrote the end of that song. It was like divine intervention.
Absolutely.
To me.
Gives me a chill just to think about that. The timing of the moment and everything that was happening, and just, it's hard to discard that as a coincidence. It was divine intervention.
Right.
Wow.
Right. So that song is really special to me, and I love the production on it. There is not a lot of production on it. It's just, man, Mary Bragg and the band, they just really treated that song so thoughtfully, and I loved it. I just loved how it turned out. So that's the second song on the album.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So you sequence. Yeah. So that's high. When you're sequencing an album, that was high on your list of where you wanted to put it. Yeah.
Yes.
That's really a great story. A sad story, of course. A sad story about your aunt and your uncle, but the life process, the things we go through, the loss that we experience, but how you took that moment and put it into your song and into your words and into your sharing of experiences.
Yeah.
I guess I just want to ask you, I want to respect your time today. I know you have a busy day today, so I'm so grateful to get to talk with you. Just a curious question, when you write, do you find yourself writing the melody first, the lyrics first, or a little bit of both?
I always have melodies going on in my head. And so I will usually have some music before I start putting ideas and thinking of ideas for a song and plugging in lyrics. But with that said, in my phone, I have, I don't know, probably 50 to 75 ideas for songs, a running list. And then I pull from those. I pull from those ideas, and then I try to write some lyrics around it. And that's usually been my process. I'm not someone who sits here and writes a song just where I write out all the lyrics and then try to put music to it. It's music first for me.
It's interesting because everybody does it differently.
I know.
You've got someone like Elton John and Bernie Taupin. You've got lyrics, you got words. Lyrics and music. You've got people that do that in every song. So when you hear when you hear Elton sing, you think those aren't really his lyrics. Those are Bernie's lyrics. And I'm sure they sit down and talk about things, and they know each other so well over the years that I'm sure Bernie knows kind of what Elton might like to sing about, or I'm sure they talk about it, but I'm sure a lot of the songs are Bernie's experiences in life. And it's interesting how, and sometimes when you talk to people, that you find out, they're doing both at the same time, the melody and the lyrics, and kind of, I find myself sometimes doing a little bit of both, like sometimes lyrics first, sometimes melody first. I don't know that I've been successful in either one, like one's better than the other, but it's just sometimes interesting that I always like to ask that question, because in my own search of what way do people write, I tend to sometimes have a melody, but I do find sometimes that the lyrics are what help me to write a melody. I don't know. I've always had melodies too, but the lyrics kind of help me to think of how I want it to sound.
Yeah, I read something in Rick Rubin's book, The Creative Act, which I highly recommend for anyone listening or watching this. He has a wonderful way of talking about the creative process, and it's easy to read, and I read it slowly to digest the concepts. They're 1 or 2 pages long, each concept. But he talks about when you think you do it a certain way, like this is the way I do it.
Right.
I start with the melody, I start with the music, I start with the guitar chord progression, then I work on finding the idea. He's like, completely flip it. And try it the opposite way, because you just might find something new and discover something better by doing it the completely opposite way that you've been doing it.
That's really that's a great insight from him, right? I mean, that really when you think about
Yeah.
that, and then you take it one step further, when you say, let's say you're recording a track and the guitar didn't play the right chord, or the strumming was just a little bit different, and you say, oh, we got to throw away that track. But then you go back and listen to it. You say, wait a second, I may not like it exactly that way, but let's do this. So even from our accidents, from our mistakes in our songwriting or in our playing, sometimes that becomes a part of it. So it's the twofold, maybe what Rick is saying, and then even
Yeah.
tracks that are accidental, become the mainstay of a song after a while.
Yeah. True. And that's why it's important too, I think, and something I've learned from these mentors of mine, record everything you're working on. And it is true. I'll go back on an airplane flight and go back and listen to little things on the guitar or things that I've hummed into my phone that I rediscover. And I'm like, oh, that's actually not bad. I'm going to stick that in my favorites category, when I've abandoned the idea because I just couldn't make it go anywhere else at the time. So I like that way of thinking, is to go back and listen to what you've done previously and see if you can resurrect it.
And especially because sometimes we can be hard on ourselves too and say, I don't like that. I don't like what I'm hearing in my voice or in my playing or whatever. But time, sometimes as
Yes.
time goes by, you start to hear it differently. But when it's in the immediate moment, it sounds like, oh, I don't like that. But then letting it simmer and just ferment for a while there and come back to it, like you said, on the plane or wherever you're traveling, or if you're sitting down on the couch and just going through some tracks on your phone, whatever, and hearing it again, and
Yeah.
it's fresh again, and it may come out of maybe the temporary file or the do not use file, or
Yeah.
part of your next song. So
Yeah. That's these little iPhones, really come in handy
yes, they
for that
do.
kind of thing.
I found that I have to
It's my
start writing.
brain.
Yeah, me too. I've got, I find that I just write down song number 70, song number 80, whatever it is. So I just know it's a
Same.
song, just so I know it's a song. I don't label it. I just say unique melody, or just
Uh-huh.
so. Um, so if I was wondering if you were planning to take some of these songs out on the road in Dallas, Nashville, or further beyond that, and once this album is released, and you're probably doing shows right now here and there in the towns where you or workshops or showcases. What are your plans? Do you have some plans to play outside of those two cities?
Yeah. So I'm doing an album release show in Dallas in June. I'm also playing in Nashville in the Finally Friday WMOT's program, where they showcase new artists. That's also in June. And at the end of May, I'm playing Kerrville. I was one of the new folk finalists for 2024. So I'm very excited about that. That's May 25th, 26th. And so far, that's what I have on the calendar. Oh, I have a Montana date on the calendar as well. Some kind of random stuff,
Yeah.
but it's kind of fun because I'm designing my own adventure. I'm not doing the traditional thing of packing up a van or something and touring the country.
Hmm.
I just want to build a selective kind of a tour, if you will, that makes sense for me. And it's the chicken or the egg thing. You've got to be able to get people to come to your show in Cleveland or wherever you might be going, and I don't have fans there that I know of yet. And so it's building building my recognition over time, and hopefully can expand and play in some other cities and some other festivals and things like that. That's what I'm really interested in.
That's great. No, that's great. It's fun because in the same way that sometimes I think of a vacation as like not really wanting to have an itinerary and have to be somewhere a
Yeah.
certain day, you kind of see where it's going when you meet people and they say, I just moved here from such and such, and boy, back there they had this Americana station, or they had this country music or this folk station, and they play songs just like yours. And then you say, oh, maybe I need to get into that market a little bit and just do a couple showcase. What kind of venues do they have? And you learn from your, like you said, you just learn from the life experience.
Right. Yeah.
It's less restrictive. It's kind of going where you're
Yeah.
meant to be.
Yeah. And I'm trying to be open about that whole process. And if doors open, and then I'm going to walk through them. But at
Absolutely.
the same time, I'm also, I'm also a businesswoman at heart. And so I'm trying to be strategic and figure out where would it make sense, and how can I develop a relationship with the person who owns that venue, or with this other artist that I might like to go on the road with and play 3 or 4 or 5 dates or something like that. So,
Right.
I do believe you make your own luck, and I don't want to sit back and just wait for things to happen. I'm going to be, and I have been proactive, very proactive about that. And it's so far so good. It's working out.
It sounds like you've got some great ideas. It sounds like it's an exciting time coming up here with the new album coming out, and whatever happens beyond that is kind of go with that. You've got the business sense, but you've also got the look of what is happening in that moment, not rigid. It's not like, okay, on May 4th we have to be here, here, and there. On May 5th we got a radio.
Yes,
May 7th we got a showcase. You kind of go with what seems right, and yet it's strategically planned so that you don't spend time on things that maybe take you away from other parts of your life.
very true.
So
Yeah.
I just want to ask you one last question. And just where should people go if they want to hear or more about your songwriting, about they hear the songs themselves, of course, or like where in social media do you find yourself interacting the most?
I am primarily on Instagram. I'm also still on Facebook. That is where my friends are and my community is. It's that generational thing. Um, so Facebook, Instagram, those are my main hubs. That's really all I have time for. I like to just pick a couple and focus on those. Um, I have a website, stephaniesammons.com. And then my music is really everywhere that you can listen to music. The album will be everywhere.
Well, I'm one of your newest subscribers on YouTube. I want to tell you, I
Well,
went on
thank
to see
you.
the different videos and stuff, and I was happy to get to subscribe because I want to hear more and see more, and hopefully share that with our fan base from our KJ Music Talk website. So
Awesome. Well, I'm going to subscribe to you as well. I forgot to mention YouTube. Yeah, I have a little bit of a presence on YouTube, and building that
yeah, and
also.
I can see that you're adding things up every day. I can see that even today you were adding some things. So it's nice that you're
Yeah,
looking at the different, like sometimes it's less is more. Like you said, you focus on Facebook, Instagram, and then YouTube rather than being out there with every one of. It's hard to keep track of them. They come and they go too, and these are the three that have been kind of the staying power of social media for a while too.
very true. Yeah.
So, well, I am so grateful to have the time to chat with you today, and I'm excited to see when once this album comes out to get people excited about it, to see what you do next, and I'll be looking for a record in 2025 now. Right, that not
Maybe.
we hope not to wait for 7 more years because we like your music, we want to.
It will not be 7 years. I can promise you that.
Well,
But yeah, I hope so. I hope to keep being consistent, and that's my goal.
I think you've just got some great ideas and plans, and just a great outlook. That's exciting it's very neat to get to hear your perspectives on the world of music, what's going on in it right now, and how we evolve and make ourselves fit within what the ever-changing industry.
Well, thanks so much, Kevin. I really appreciate you having me today.
We hope to talk to you again, and best of success with your new album.
Thank you.